The Star Wars sequel trilogy delivered some of the saga's most visually stunning moments and some of its messiest continuity. Across 3 films and 3 different creative visions, long-established rules about hyperspace, the Force, and galactic warfare were bent, broken, and hastily patched over. Let's untangle exactly how it all fractured, starting with the single most controversial scene in modern Star Wars, the Holdo maneuver and hyperspace weaponization. It's one of the most visually stunning shots in the entire Star Wars saga. Vice Admiral Holdo aims the Raddus at the Supremacy, jumps to hyperspace, and splits the flagship in half in near total silence. The screen flashes black and white. The First Order fleet crumbles. It's breathtaking, and it completely breaks 40 years of galactic warfare. Here's the thing. If any ship with a hyperdrive can be turned into a planet-killing projectile, why has no one done this before? The Death Star trench run becomes the dumbest military strategy in history. Just aim an X-wing at light speed through the thermal exhaust port. Problem solved. The Rebel Alliance had entire fleets at Endor. One cruiser could have obliterated the second Death Star. Han Solo warned us in A New Hope that miscalculated hyperspace jumps would be catastrophic. Fly through a star, bounce too close to a supernova, trips over real quick. That line implies destructive collisions are possible, but across 6 Lucasfilms and the Clone Wars, nobody ever weaponizes it. Not once. Hyperspace is treated as a navigational challenge, not a tactical nuke. After the backlash, sourcebooks scrambled to patch the problem. They called it a 1 in a million shot. You need the exact mass, the exact hyperdrive configuration, the exact shield conditions, the exact trajectory, which is fine print, technically there, completely unsatisfying. Episode 9 even includes a throwaway line where someone suggests trying another Holdo maneuver and gets shut down because it's impractical. That's a meta-acknowledgement of fan complaints dressed up as dialogue, but the line doesn't solve anything. Holdo proved it works. The universe just decided to pretend it doesn't, but at least it's a one-off controversy, unlike what Poe Dameron does with hyperspace in the very next film. Hyperspace skipping and FTL. Travel limitation, let's be honest, the opening chase in Episode 9 is genuinely fun the first time you watch it. Poe is yanking the Falcon through rapid-fire micro-jumps, popping out inside an ice tunnel, nearly clipping a city, appearing next to some massive creature that has no business being that close to a hyperspace exit point. It's chaotic, it's loud, and it works as spectacle. But here's the thing. Rewind to 1977, and Han Solo gives us one of the most quoted lines in the franchise. Jumping to lightspeed without precise calculations means you could fly through a star or bounce too close to a supernova. That's not a suggestion, that's framed as a fundamental law of how faster-than-light travel works. Hyperspace skipping treats that same danger like a difficulty setting Poe just turned down to easy. And then there's the TIE fighters. In the original trilogy, standard TIEs don't have hyperdrives. That's the whole point. That's why jumping to lightspeed is the escape plan. The Falcon goes to hyperspace, the TIEs can't follow, end of chase. It's one of the most iconic tension mechanics in the series. But in this scene, First Order TIEs are matching Poe jump for jump with zero explanation. Nobody mentions it, nobody reacts to it. It just happens. Now, the novelization does try to patch this. It describes skipping as dangerously straining the Falcon's systems and being possible only because of its unique modifications. But none of that exists in the film. If you didn't read the supplementary material, you'd have no idea there were supposed to be limitations at all. And the connection between hyperspace tracking from Episode 8 and whatever the TIEs are doing here never explicitly linked across the 2 movies. One chase scene quietly retired decades of established tension, and the fix lives in a footnote. But if a few fighters bending the rules bothers you, wait until you see what an entire hidden armada does to galactic logic. The sudden return of Palpatine and the Scythe Eternal Fleet. Let's talk about the single most consequential villain reveal in the entire Skywalker saga. Not where it happened in the movie, where it happened in Fortnite. Palpatine's return, the thing that drives the entire plot of Episode 9, was announced via a limited time event in a battle royale game. If you weren't playing Fortnite on that specific day, you walked into the theater, read the dead, speak in the opening crawl, and just had to accept it. No build-up across 2 prior films. A Fortnite event, I don't know what to tell you. But the broadcast isn't even the real problem. The real problem is what Kylo finds on Exegol. Thousands of Ziston-class Star Destroyers, each armed with a planet-killing super laser. Not one super weapon. Thousands. Crewed by generations of Sith cultists building warships underground for decades. Here's where it gets complicated. If Palpatine had this fleet the entire time, why did the First Order build Starkiller Base? Why did Snoke never mention it? The strategic reality of Episodes 7 and 8 completely falls apart the moment this fleet exists. The novelization does solid work, clarifying that the Palpatine on Exegol is a clone body, a decaying vessel inhabited by his transferred consciousness. This connects to Darth Plagueis' research, to everything he whispered to Anakin in that opera house. The Aftermath novels even mention Imperial remnants fleeing into the unknown regions. Those books are retroactively recruited as foreshadowing. The patch holds on how Palpatine survived. Where it completely breaks is what his survival means for Anakin Skywalker. 6 films build toward one moment. The Chosen One destroys the Sith. That's the prophecy. If Palpatine just transferred his consciousness into a clone, the second his original form hit that reactor shaft, then Anakin's sacrifice didn't destroy the Sith, it inconvenienced them. The films never explain how the prophecy still holds when the thing he destroyed simply refused to stay destroyed. But if you think a hidden fleet breaks the lore, wait until you hear what a single touch of the hand does to the entire metaphysics of the Force. Force healing and death reversal mechanics. Here's the thing about Force healing. It's not that it doesn't make sense as a concept, it's that it makes everything else stop making sense the moment it exists. In Episode 9, Rey heals a wounded serpent by transferring her own life energy into it. Later, she does the same to Kylo Ren after stabbing him through the chest. And in the climax, Ben Solo pours his entire life force into Rey's dead body, fully resurrecting her, and drops dead on the spot. Cool. Now rewind 50 years in universe. Anakin Skywalker's entire descent into darkness, his betrayal of the Jedi, his murder of children, all of it hinges on one belief, that the dark side is the only path to saving someone from death. If light side force healing existed as a learnable skill from ancient Jedi texts, which is exactly where Rey found it, then the entire tragedy of the prequels is built on an administrative oversight. Someone forgot to check the library, and Lucasfilm knew this was a problem. The Mandalorian episode, where Grogu heals Greef Karga's wound, aired days before Episode 9 hit theaters. That's transmedia priming. They wanted audiences already thinking, oh yeah, force healing is a thing now. Which is clever, but it also means an infant with zero training can do it. The film tries to cover itself with the dyad in the force concept. Rey and Ben share a bond so powerful, their combined energy is unprecedented. But the film never clarifies whether the dyad is why resurrection works or just why it works so well. Which is, not ideal when the answer determines whether every previous death in the franchise was preventable. The cost structure makes it worse. Healing a snake costs nothing. Healing a stab wound makes Rey tired. Resurrection costs a life. But where's the line? Nobody knows. And because nobody knows, every time a Jedi watches someone die going forward, the audience is silently asking why they didn't just try harder. But if you think retroactively breaking the prequels is bad, wait until you hear how they handled the guy pulling Kylo Ren's strings the entire time. The origin and identity shifts of Supreme Leader, Snoke. Snoke is the clearest proof that nobody planned this trilogy, and I don't mean that as vague criticism. You can trace it film by film, like watching 3 different people try to finish the same sentence. Episode 7 introduces Snoke as a deliberate mystery. No Sith title, no origin, no explanation for how this scarred, ancient-looking figure seized control of the First Order or corrupted Ben Solo. The fandom spent 2 years building theories. Darth Plagueis was the dominant one, because Snoke was powerful, old, scarred, and conveniently aligned with everything Palpatine described in that opera scene. It made too much sense, which should have been the first red flag. Episode 8 kills him, mid-film, cut in half by his own apprentice, and the movie couldn't care less about explaining who he was. Rian Johnson wanted to collapse the mystery box entirely and pivot toward Kylo Ren as the real antagonist. No more old masters pulling strings. Kylo did the thing, and now he's free. Genuinely bold storytelling. Then Episode 9 reveals Kylo was never free at all. Palpatine casually mentions he made Snoke, and the camera cuts to vats of deformed Snoke bodies floating in liquid on Exegol. Multiple copies, industrial scale. The sequel trilogy's central authority figure was grown in a jar like a novelty sea monkey, which is, not ideal. Episode 8's most celebrated moment, Kylo killing his master as radical self-determination, gets quietly revealed to have been a chess move by the actual old master all along. The subversion gets unsubverted. The cycle Rian Johnson broke never actually broke, and Snoke never once mentions Exegol, the Sith Eternal, or Palpatine across 2 entire films. Either that's the greatest puppet master concealment in fiction, or nobody had invented Exegol yet when those scripts were written. I don't know what to tell you. But if Snoke's identity crisis feels messy, wait until you see what they did to Rey's parents. 3 films, 3 completely different answers. Rey's parental lineage retcons. This is the one. The continuity break that launched 1,000 video essays and turned comment sections into philosophical battlegrounds. Because this isn't just a retcon. It's 2 directors having a public argument about what Star Wars means, and we gotta watch it happen across 2 consecutive films. Here's the setup. The Force Awakens frames Rey's parentage as the question of the new trilogy. The Force visions when she touches Luke's saber, the way Han looks at her, Maz telling her the belonging she seeks is ahead, not behind. This girl is somebody's kid, and the film wants you guessing whose. Then Episode 8 says, no. Kylo tells Rey her parents were filthy junk traders who sold her for drinking money. Nobody's. The film frames her tearful acceptance as liberation. You don't need a dynasty. The Force belongs to everyone. It's a genuine thematic statement, not just a plot twist. Then Episode 9 goes actually. She's Palpatine's granddaughter. Kylo clarifies her parents chose to be nobodies to hide her from Exegol, which technically preserves his earlier claim. But the technically not a lie defense is lawyerly storytelling that satisfies absolutely no one, because it completely guts the meaning of the original scene. Here's where it gets interesting though. The novelization explains Rey's father wasn't Palpatine's biological son. He was a Strandcast, a failed clone who developed his own identity and rejected his creator. Rey is essentially a third-generation product of dark side genetic engineering who chooses to call herself Skywalker. That's wild, but the deeper problem isn't lore. 6 films and decades of canon never once reference Palpatine having offspring or family of any kind. Inserting a secret lineage rewrites his character with zero foreshadowing, and the competing visions aren't reconcilable because the contradiction is philosophical. Rian Johnson believes greatness can come from anywhere. J.J. Abrams believes mythic bloodlines are the engine of Star Wars. Both directed canonical films. Both are right. That's exactly why this one still stings. But if you think a disagreement about parentage is messy, wait until you see what happens to a single lightsaber across 3 films. The Skywalker's lightsaber and the restoration of the blade. Anakin's blue lightsaber gets cut from Luke's hand at Cloud City and falls into the infinite depths of a gas giant. The weapon is gone. It's tumbling into an abyss of crushing atmospheric pressure on a planet made of gas. There is no floor to land on. And then Episode 7 opens a chest in Maz Kanata's castle, and there it is. Han Solo asks the obvious question. Maz replies, a good question for another time. That time never comes. Not in Episode 8, not in Episode 9, not in a single piece of mainline media. Everyone just moved on, like it didn't happen. I don't know what to tell you, but here's where it gets worse. In Episode 8, the saber is destroyed. Rey and Kylo play tug of war with it through the Force. The Kyber crystal cracks, the hilt splits in 2. Luke literally threw the thing over his shoulder earlier in the film. The message is clear. The old relics don't matter anymore. Let them break. Then Episode 9 opens and Rey is holding it again. Repaired. A little metal band around the break point like a wedding ring on a fractured bone. No scene showing the repair, no dialogue acknowledging it. A weapon whose destruction was framed with enormous dramatic weight just quietly shows back up in working condition. And here's the sleeper issue nobody talks about. Luke's green lightsaber, the one he built himself, the weapon he used in his greatest battles, essentially doesn't exist in these films. It appears in flashbacks. That's it. The sequels center Anakin's blue blade as the saga's primary relic, while Luke's actual personal weapon collects dust in a narrative closet. The final insult is the burial. Rey buries the blue saber on Tatooine, a grand symbolic gesture for an object with more continuity gaps than any other prop in the franchise. Buried on a planet Luke wanted to escape his entire life. But it looks good on camera, and that's apparently what matters. If you think a single lightsaber caused continuity headaches, wait until you see what happens when you try to track an entire fleet across 3 films. The destruction and rebirth of the Resistance fleet. Let's do some quick math here. Episode 7 destroys the New Republic's government and most of its navy in a single Starkiller blast. Episode 8 then spends its entire runtime grinding the Resistance down to nothing. Ships run out of fuel, get picked off one by one, until everyone who's left fits inside the Millennium Falcon, a few dozen people. Then Leia sends out a distress call from Crate, a plea to every ally they've ever had. Nobody comes. 0 ships. The film makes this deliberate. The galaxy watched the Resistance die and collectively decided it wasn't their problem. So then Episode 9 opens and the Resistance has a jungle base, multiple ships, full fighter squadrons, and an active spy network inside the First Order, which is, a bit of a jump from literally everyone fits on one freighter. The film never explains how this recovery happened. It just happened. Between credits, the novel Resistance Reborn does bridge this gap. depicting Poe and Leia recruiting former New Republic members and rebuilding from scratch. It's a genuine effort to explain the logistics, but it exists exclusively for people who read a tie-in novel between theatrical releases. For everyone else, the Resistance regenerated off-screen like a starfish. But here's the real kicker. The climax of Episode 9 features Lando showing up over Exegol with thousands of ships. Thousands. Civilian freighters, capital ships, fighters from every corner of the galaxy, all mobilized on a few hours' notice to fight at a hidden planet most people didn't know existed until that afternoon. The same galaxy that heard Leia's distress call and said nothing now assembles the largest fleet in Star Wars history because Lando asked nicely over the radio. The moment works emotionally, but it costs the trilogy its internal logic, coordinating thousands of independent ships to navigate uncharted hyperspace routes to a Sith world nobody has coordinates for, all within hours. That's not a fleet, that's a miracle with no mechanical explanation. The political math doesn't add up when the previous film's entire thesis was that nobody cares enough to help. But if you think fleet logistics are a headache, wait until you hear about the backstory they invented for Poe Dameron between films. Poe Dameron's secret history and Spice Runner retcon. Before Episode 9, Poe Dameron had one of the cleanest backstories in the sequel era. Son of Rebel Alliance veterans Shara Bey and Kez Dameron, raised on Yavin 4, recruited straight out of the New Republic Defense Fleet by Leia Organa herself. A generational hero with a generational hero's resume. No gaps, no criminal detours, no awkward silences at dinner parties. Then Zori Bliss shows up on Kijimi and calls him a Spice Runner. Spice running, for those unfamiliar, is Star Wars shorthand for drug smuggling. The Kessel spice mines have been part of this universe since 1977. This isn't a gray area, and the film treats it like banter. Finn goes, "What?" Rey raises an eyebrow. Poe gets a little defensive. Everyone moves on. Cool. The Resistance commander used to traffic narcotics. That's also a thing that happened. Here's the thing. The established timeline of Poe's career left zero room for a criminal chapter. Comics, novels, reference guides, all of them tracked him from Yavin 4 to the New Republic Navy to Leia's doorstep without interruption. So Lucasfilm did what Lucasfilm does best in this era. They published a novel to fix it. Poe Dameron. Freefall reconfigures the spice running as a teenage rebellion arc. Restless kid, dead mother, overbearing father, falls in with Zori's crew, gets disillusioned by the harm, leaves. The entire criminal history gets compressed into late adolescence, so that the rest of his timeline still works. And technically it does work. The pieces fit if you hold them at the right angle. But let's be honest about what actually happened here. A screenwriter wanted Poe to have a Han Solo past because the original trilogy's hotshot pilot had a smuggler backstory, so this one needed one too. That's the creative logic. Not what does Poe's story require, but what did Han's story have? The spice running exists because of nostalgia math, not character necessity, and the moral weight of what spice running actually means in this universe, completely underdeveloped, both in the film and in Freefall. Nobody sits with it, nobody interrogates what Poe moving product actually did to people. It's set dressing for a roguish vibe. This is the most nakedly reactive piece of lore connectivity in the entire trilogy. A novel written specifically to plug a hole created by a single scene. 9 continuity breaks, 3 directors, 1 galaxy, and a story group working backwards from the credits to make the pieces fit. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.